I'm going to keep this very honest and heartfelt. Today when Angie asked me to introduce herself, first I thought I should write something. And I'm like, you know what, if I write something, it's not going to be as honest and true as it comes out. So this is me talking about Angie without any preparation, because that's how I know her. I met Angie 6 years ago when I moved here. She was one of the first few people I met. As a parent, I was in a new city. I have GT children. I was trying to find a support group of parents, and I found PACE, which is an organization which is a parent support group for academic excellence. And I met Angie over there, and I just learned that she knew so much about schools, about supporting children. I became friends with her. Over the years, we've been on the PACE board together. We've been on several district boards and district task force. We are on the GT task force. We are co-Destination Imagination team managers. She's a Destination Imagination team manager. And from all the people whom I have known, she is one of the most hardworking, dedicated moms, volunteer, that I have come across. And there's one thing that Angie and I have spoken about, and which has always touched my heart, is when she when she gives a word about something, she keeps her word. So I really, really appreciate that about her. She does so many things behind the scenes that none of you probably know about. She knows education policy, like in and out, and there are so many things that she does as an advocate when she is on the task force about educating others, about educating parents of what needs to be done and how you can support your children. I think she is a catalyst behind a lot of things that have positively happened in the district. She may not be in the front run and you may not know about it, but there are so many things that she has done that I've really, really appreciated over the years. So without further ado, I would like to introduce and call Angie Hanan here to say a few words, and I truly, truly appreciate you. And I want to see her on the Fort Bend ISD Board of Trustees, because she is one person who is going to run for our kids.
Thank you, Renisha. So I have a very big and booming voice too, but over the years I've decided that I'm going to use the microphone when it's available, and I'm also going to tell you guys that I'm going to be in an awkward, I'm either going to be here or I'm going to be here because the projector is blinding me. Okay. So I'm going to start off. Thank you all. I know we have busy Sunday afternoons, and I appreciate that you're all here. And it's so nice to see so many familiar faces who know me quite well. Before I start, there is a person, and she's holding a phone. But I want to introduce some of the people that have been helping me over the last few weeks. Kathy Hunter has worked tirelessly for me and my campaign. And getting things off the ground with my website. I think she knows people at PayPal on a first name basis, trying to figure out HTML code. She's recruited her son to help us with some code too. She's just done so many things, and I appreciate that very much. Jigisha Doshi, she was up here, and Gaurav Javeri is in the back. They have been helping me so much reach out into the community, and I appreciate their work kind of with the grassroots effort. We've got someone that couldn't be here today, and it's actually Nadine Skinner. She did run for the board last year, and she's given me the inside information on all kinds of things, from bank accounts to what print shop to use. So it's really nice to have people that help you along the way, because this is something very new to me. And so the other person that's really helped me out is my husband Tom, and I want to introduce Tom and Audrey. This is my husband Tom, and he's been helping a lot as well. Audrey made my little sign over there yesterday. And if she didn't have so much homework, I know she'd be helping me even more. So I really do appreciate them very much. So I'm going to ask this question first. So who in the audience, you currently have kids in Fort Bend ISD, in the Fort Bend ISD school? Okay, about half of us. So now, how many of you had kids who went through Fort Bend ISD? Like they're grown, they're gone, they're grown adults, but they went through Fort Bend ISD. Okay, very good. So, quarter of you. So how many of you in here have a home that you are really hoping keeps really great property value? You want to, when you don't decide to move out of that house, you want people just banging on that door because they want to come because the school district is amazing. So how many of you, are that person? Okay. So I'm that person too. So I have a kiddo in the school district. Audrey is in 8th grade at Quail Valley Middle School, and a couple of her schoolmates are here tonight, or today, this afternoon. And so before I tell you a little bit about myself, I'm going to tell you a story. And you might think, why is she telling me this story? That's the story of my family. I will point out that another person, I have great neighbors. I live, as the crow flies, probably a half a mile from here in Sugar Lakes. And my neighbor took this picture in part of our neighborhood, and it's a beautiful old tree at the end of a street, and I feel lucky to have a neighbor who will also be my free photographer. She's a dentist, but also a great photographer. So she's helped me out as well. So here's a story, and I'm not running for city council. I'm not confused about what I'm running for. I'm running for the board, so bear with me with this story. So in about 2008, Tom and I reached out to people in the city, at the city of Sugar Land, because there was a whole bunch of new development around Flor Daniel. So nice, shiny new grocery store, nice, beautiful restaurants, nice brownstone houses, homes, and along with those homes came this nice, beautiful, long stretch of sidewalk. It was amazing. It was beautiful. But from Oyster Creek to Sugar Lakes, where I live, which was only maybe 50 or 60 yards, there was no sidewalk. And so if we wanted to use, families wanted to use their stroller, go walking, you either had to go through the grass or you had to go on the street. So we reached out to the people in the city, and it was about 2008, and actually they were quite responsive, and they built this fairly decent gravel path. It was a gravel path. It didn't look like this at the time. It was about 5 feet wide, and it was bordered by some metal, just strips to try to keep the grass from encroaching on there. So, it was great. People listened. They were pretty prompt. But then, so let's look at what happened. This was probably 3 years later. And so Audrey was pretty small. That's Audrey. And so, it's not the greatest for a small child to be on gravel on a bike. You don't get much traction. It's a little slippery. And then by 2014, the 5-foot path had barely turned into, the little trail that you see on the other side. So I decided, you know what? Okay, maybe our path could look better. And actually what inspired me is then they were building new beautiful sidewalks along Belknap that was going to the sugar mill where that new business property is going to happen. So I reached out to Bridget Young, who was our city councilwoman at the time, and she was really amazing and she was responsive, but it did take some persistence, and Bridget told me, I promise I'm listening to you, but the guideline wires along the path have to be moved by the electric company. It's a bigger deal than it looks like. And I believed her, but I continued to persist, and she continued to work with me and listen. And then by 2017, 3 years later to the date, I drove by, and here's what I had. They were pouring the concrete for this beautiful sidewalk that we have. the guideline wires that held up the pole, they had been moved. And so, you know, we could see this beautiful path. And so in our city, we had a wonderful bike and hike plan, and now we have something called the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And so the city for those of you that live in Sugar Land, they had done a great job really at planning bike lanes and paths, but they had somehow missed us. So we weren't connected, right? The old community that was more established wasn't connected to the new neighborhood. You know, hard for parents with strollers, hard for our older walkers who you know, this is clearly a much better way to go. And so I'm using this story just kind of as an illustration of two things. An illustration of, one, how a community member, myself, was listened to by Bridget Young. The city councilwoman listened to me and worked with me and thought that what I had to say was really important. And she not only helped me, she helped everybody living in both communities, because now both communities can go either way. The other thing that I use this to illustrate is my persistence. And that's one thing that you have to have, I know, to get things done. And sometimes without that persistence, you're going to wind up with the little 10-inch dirt path that finally disappears altogether. And so I'm here today to talk to you about why I'm running for the school board, a little bit about who I am and why I'm qualified to be here. So when we were thinking about some friends helping me, you know, kind of think about, well, what is your platform? Why are you running? And it really came down to this. It came down to positive forward progress every single day for every single child that goes to school in this school district. And it's not only about the kids, it's about their families, because families need education too to help support their kids. And we all want a strong school system because this is the community we live in, but we also want equity among our communities. We don't want some of our schools looking like the 4-inch path and some of our schools looking like the bright, shiny new sidewalk. So we know that, you know, there were obstacles in the way of getting that path, and I'm fully aware of the obstacles that I face running against an incumbent. I recognize the obstacles I face coming onto a board with lots of board members who have been there a long time. But I think what I have to bring to the board is very important, because I think, similar to Shirley, is I have a background in education that enables me to ask some questions that I don't hear our current board members asking. And it's maybe no fault of their own, but that's not their training and that's not their background. So it'll be 30 years pretty soon that I've been in education. 15 of those years were in public schools. Started as a substitute teacher, was a classroom teacher of young children, a reading recovery teacher. I worked with ESL kids. I spent 5 years as the district-wide ESL coordinator, working with diverse learners and their families. Kids learning it was tough for those kids because they're learning English as well as learning all that content at the same time. So I've got that background. I got my master's in reading and language arts and curriculum instruction, and then I actually went on to get 60 additional graduate hours, all in education. So I feel like I do have the background that I need to know how to ask the right questions about what we're doing to get our kids where they need to be and make that progress every day. As far as Jagisha mentioned that I volunteer, I do volunteer with an organization called PACE. I want to say that this is not an endorsement from PACE because we are a 503c, and that's not an endorsement. But we really work very hard to provide education to parents. We had a very big summer camp expo a few weeks ago. We had a very big turnout. We had over 30 vendors come to share with parents, hey, look at what's available in the summer to provide enrichment. So that's just one thing that organization does. when Audrey was in elementary school, I volunteered and did reading groups at their school. I worked with the highest kids, I worked with the lowest kids, I worked with first graders and second graders just as a volunteer. What else? I'm active with the League of Women Voters. If you ever go in First Colony Library or the University Library on the first Tuesday or Wednesday of the month, from 2 to 4, you'll see me sitting there and educating people about elections and educating people that might need to register to vote. And I do register people to vote as well. So I could share a little more with you about some of my volunteer work, but I do think that because I volunteer, I hear a lot from the community. I'm out there a lot. I hear from parents and I hear from community members about the things that they feel are important. So, as you think about my qualifications, I want to tell you about why I'm running for the school board, because that's the real thing. So I'm running for the school board because the bottom line is it's about children. And so I think that kids are very important, and I think that because I'm a mom who cares deeply about my kids' education, and I know that every one of you out here that have kids, that's a deep concern of yours. I think actually that's one of the things that makes me most qualified, is I'm a mom, and that's why I'm running, is because I want the very best for my kid when she gets to turn the tassel. I want her to get the most of what she can in Fort Bend ISD. So I also want to talk a little bit about what I think, what my vision is for kids that are learning. I think kids are amazing, and I think they have this amazing capacity to learn, and I think that we need to make sure that we are really embracing that capacity. And one of the reasons I really want to run is not because I disagree with everything that Fort Bend does. It's actually quite the opposite. I really agree with some of the written policies. When you sit down and you read the written policies, they're amazing. And when you look at something like the profile of a graduate, who wouldn't want their kids to have those attributes? And so I'm running because I want there to be a connection. I want there to be this true connection between what we say we're doing in policy and what our vision is. I want it to actually be what's happening in the classrooms. And so I'm just curious with the people here, because I saw about half of you. How many of you can name the indicators that are on the profile of a graduate? You can yell them out. Yell out one.
Servant leader.
Servant leader.
Communication.
Effective communicator is one.
Lifelong learner.
Lifelong learner. What, Shirley?
Informed.
Okay, informed, and that would be, there's one that is similar to informed, with critical thinker is one.
Problem solver.
Problem solver is in there with critical thinker, and then the other one is, and I kind of use this to say there's a lot of parents that we can't. It's very important to Fort Bend ISD. It appears in 12 of our policies connected directly with student instruction. But we can't necessarily name them rapidly, and I wonder if our kids can name them rapidly. And I wonder if we're measuring those outcomes. I think that's important. So I'm going to just use two pieces of vision today and policy to talk about why I want to be on the board. So just like the profile of a graduate, I feel critical thinking is so important. I think the instruction should be relevant. I think the students should have very student-centered instruction. I think they should really have a hand in what they get to do every day. They should have a voice in what they are doing. I know that there is curriculum that has to be taught, but I think when students have choices, that's going to be very beneficial to them. So one of the pieces in Profile of a Graduate, and we have those posters in every school right by the front door, is critical thinker. And you all know about STAR test, and you know about the indicators, some of the indicators that are for accountability. But
critical thinking is so important to our kids, but I don't see how we're measuring the growth to get those kids to have those attributes at the end game. And so one example I'm going to point out, in 2013, we had a curriculum audit in Fort Bend ISD. And just like, I mean, you never want to see the paper that comes in the mail in an envelope that says you're having a tax audit, because do most of you know what that would mean? You're gonna be looked at pretty closely, right? Your taxes, your dollars, your spending, how you're accounting and telling the government what you're spending. So a curriculum audit does something similar. So auditors come in, and it's a deficit model. They're not coming in to tell you how wonderful you are. They're coming in to see where you have gaps. Like what could you be doing better? And so in 2013, huge document, but one thing that was very, very loud to me was on critical thinking. So I believe that staff knew that the auditors were coming on certain days, and they collected what they called artifacts. It was work samples. 58% of the work samples they collected, and it was hundreds and hundreds, 58% of the samples were below grade level. So I'm going to say that again. 58% of the samples were below grade level, and they were also at the lower levels of thinking. That's just like knowledge, it's something I can remember, it's a fact, I can spell. And so what we're looking for with critical thinking are those higher level thinking skills. We want kids to be able to say, I read this article, is it true? Is it, is it propaganda? We want them to be able to evaluate and really think about, we want them to watch TV and the media and be able to think and determine, is this a manipulation through propaganda, or can I prove this? And so I'm very concerned because the auditors said, and this is just an example, that the evidence that they saw did not match what the policy said about rigor and challenge. And I think no matter if you're a pre-K child or you're a kiddo about to be graduating as a senior, I think you should have the opportunity to have rigor and challenge at your level. Pre-K should be looking a little bit more like play, I hope. But we want that. I want that in our schools. And so our ESL students, every single day, I want challenge and rigor for them at the right level. I want them to be able to have the appropriate materials they need. If you're a child with dyslexia, I want you to have the appropriate level of challenge and rigor. If you're a kiddo that's learning English, if you're a child in a bilingual program, if you're a child in a gifted program, if you're in a regular ed program, every single child should have the opportunity to have the challenge and the rigor that they need. So that's one example of policy and how there's maybe a mismatch. The other piece that I wanted to talk about was 21st century learning. Because 21st century learning also appears in one of our curriculum policies. And can anybody guess what 21st century learning means? Take a stab in the dark. It's about digital literacy. Like, can you use technology in a way that is going to make you a productive person in the workforce when you graduate? It's about, can you collaborate with others on real life problem solving? Can you communicate in a way that's effective in the day and time? The world has become so much smaller because we can communicate in that way. It's also very learner-centered. So I'm really, really targeting those policies and those visions that talk about critical thinking, they talk about rigor, they talk about challenge, and they talk about making sure our kids have the appropriate skills by the time they graduate. Because the vision is there, but I'm not sure that the measurement and evaluation of our programs is there either. I do have concern that we are not evaluating our programs like we should. So this is the year required by Fort Bend ISD policy that there should be another curriculum audit. And I want to be on the board because I want to be able to help the board understand, looking at that 2013 versus 2020. Now, where are we today? What growth, what is the positive progress forward we have made? We've had 7 years to work to advance our kids in our program. And I want to be that person to help ask the questions that I think need to be asked about that. So, let me look at my watch. It's been a while. So I'm going to go through these very quickly. These are my 5 sort of key points, my priorities. Students are one. I think students need more voice. I think we need to listen to them. I think they're so amazingly smart that they would give us ideas about their own learning and how they want to learn it. It's going to help them be motivated, and it's going to help them want to come to school every day. And I think that's so important. The other piece of the student is I want to make sure students feel like they belong in their school. I think that's so important. I had the opportunity to be a human library back in the fall, and I noticed a girl sitting by herself. And I watched her for a while, and nobody went over, and I finally went over. And it was just any kid could ask any adult that was part of the library anything they wanted. It was to help them with communication skills. And so I went over and we started talking, and you could tell that she was not really wanting to talk to me. But by the end, we wound up talking for about 20 minutes. And I learned a lot about her. She was new to the school. She didn't have any friends there. Her friends were in FBISD. And she was really, really happy. She had a happy face by the time I left. But then 2 weeks later, I was delivering, I think, Halloween candy. And I went into the Avid room, and all of the people in the room said, "Hey, it's Miss Angie." I didn't know anyone in the room except that one child that I had talked to in the library. And so, when I talk about kids, I get choked up. So that one kiddo, it made a difference that somebody talked to her, because it was important enough that she turned around and told everybody who I was. And that's important, because everybody should be talked to when they're at school. I'm gonna work on that. Sometimes I do that. So I'll come back around. Sorry about that. I think student success outcomes are right there. As you've heard me, it's about really evaluating the programs that you have. But another piece of that is really looking at some of the measures that we are using to measure growth. We have something called REN 360 that measures math and reading growth. And I think that I need for our district to really look at that. I think some of our students, there is an artificial ceiling that we need measures that actually measure adequate yearly progress. I'm not sure that how we're measuring adequate yearly progress is meeting the needs of all of our learners. As far as stability, now here is one. I think stability is so important, not only in the community and the rezoning, and I know the school district is working with new policy on school boundaries. So I think implementing that vision of how school boundary committees might be looking different is very important, and the long-range planning needs to be more solidified than it currently is, because nobody wants their community rezoned. School rezoning is tough for communities, and I know that sometimes it has to happen. The other thing I want to talk about is reducing the amount, or the frequency rather, of how many times the district reorganizes its employees. I think that that's hard for employees, and I think that it makes it a challenge to make positive forward progress when you have constant reorganization. So I think that that's something that needs to be looked at very, very carefully. I also think stakeholder input is important, not only listening to student voices, but I think listening to teachers, counselors, principals, and people that work in central office too. And as an example, I think with reorganization, you have to reach out to everyone. You have to reach out to the community, people that work in the schools. I think we need to work at making sure that it's not just a few select handful of people who may be executive leaders making a decision about reorganizing a very large portion of our school. The last one is safety and security. I worry every day. I worry when I go to the movies, like where is the exit? And I hate to do that, but I do have a couple of things on here. I do think this district is moving in the right direction. I think their plan, their 2017 audit, I've read, I think the plan that they're using, the money that they've set aside for bond, I do think they're going in the right direction, and I support that. I support the direction they're going. One of the things I'd like to see, I would like to see them communicate with parents. What is my child being taught to do in emergency situations? Because I don't know what they're being taught. I do know that there is a safety protocol because I've seen it on the website, but I don't know that my child has been taught that. And I think that's one thing, because we want to reinforce with our kids what they're being taught at school in situations that may bring an emergency situation. So there's probably more. You can look on my website. But today, before you leave, I have some sticky notes over here by the water, and I would like you to do something for me. I would like you to just write one thing, whether you're here as a taxpayer, you want your property taxes or at least your property value to stay where it's at or even go up, or you're a parent. Tell me what positive forward progress looks like to you. Because I want to read that. And if you're a student today, tell me what positive forward progress looks like for you at school, or maybe next year. What does that look like to you? So I do want to hear from you. And then, this is my education speech. Please make sure to help me educate your neighbors. Everyone in Fort Bend ISD votes for every position. So even though I'm position 1, which is from the heart of Sugar Land, do you know those big highline wires that go through Oyster Creek? Like they start at, you can see them as you go across Lexington and 6. That's kind of the dividing line. So from there this way is position 1. And Shirley's position is more on the other side of that highline wire.
Actually, I'm at large. So
Oh, you're at 4 as an at large, so you're everywhere. But everybody votes for every position. So please let your neighbors know that. Early voting is on April 20th, so this campaign is not going to be very long. The election is on May 2nd. You met some of my wonderful volunteers, so if you are going to volunteer to put a yard sign in, or you're going to volunteer to call some friends, or forward things on Facebook, or whatever you can do, knock on some doors, have a house party for me. And by party, I just mean have some people over and some bottles of water. That's my idea of party. Yeah, water. Well, okay. Okay, so just let us know. And then, so today I do have to ask this question, and this is awkward for me, and this is out of my comfort zone. But to buy those signs, and some of you may have seen my opponent's very large sign out in the middle of the median, but to buy those signs, I'm going to need some contributions. So if you go to my website, which you can either get there through the QR code or my website is there, you can also make checks available to me, and I've put that up here as well. So before I close, does anyone have any questions for me? You're a quiet group. I answered all your questions. Well, I appreciate you being here. I do want to hear what you think positive forward progress looks like to you. And again, thank you so much, everybody, for being here today for me. Vote Angie Hanan.